Terry Barber is a best-selling author and founder of Lighthouse Catholic Media. Jesse Romero is a retired law enforcement officer, a former kickboxing champion with a master's degree in theology. And together, they share a passion for evangelization and PhDs in common sense. You're listening to The Terry and Jesse Show on Immaculate Heart Radio. To join the show, call 888-526-2151. Here's Terry and Jesse.
Pull up a chair, join us, pour yourself something to drink, keep it sober. This is a family radio program. Hey, did you go to Mass today? I know maybe some of you couldn't go, you're on your way to work, but the gospel reading today was
powerful,
unbelievable. One of my favorite gospels, because I've used it a lot in apologetics, and Matthew chapter 18, verses 15 to 20. Look at what it says. Jesus said to his disciples, if your brother sins against you, go and tell him his fault between you and him alone. If he listens to you, you've won over your brother. If he does not listen, take one or two others along with you, so that every fact may be established on the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses. If he refuses to listen to them, tell the church. If he refuses to listen even to the church, then treat him as you would a Gentile or a tax collector. I remember I was giving a talk at a parish. Many Protestants were there. As many Protestants go to a lot of the talks that I give, especially when the flyers say apologetics. So after the presentation, it was on authority. I had 6 Protestant brothers come up to me, and they wanted to ask questions. They thought it was very, very insightful, some of the things that I pointed out that they didn't know. And it was funny, but I had 6 different Protestants around me, different denominations, and they were all asking me questions. I was saying, okay, so what do you believe about John chapter 6? I said, here's the Catholic position. I said, Baptist, what do you believe? Okay. Calvinist, what do you believe? Lutheran, what do you believe? Episcopal. So 6 different Protestant brothers were there, and I asked them what they believed about the Holy Eucharist, Holy Communion, based on John chapter 6. All of them had a different perspective on John chapter 6. I said, therein lies the problem. This is why today's verse in the gospel is so important, because Jesus said, when you have a problem in the church, you don't go to the Bible and take out the Bible and start arguing Bible verses. Jesus says when you have a problem, heresy or a question of sin, you go to the church. In other words, that verse falls apart if there's 40,000 denominations. That verse makes no sense if there's 40,000 denominations, because then where do you go? Eeny, meeny, miny, mo. That verse today in Matthew chapter 18 of today's gospel at Holy Mass, verses 15 to 20, only makes sense if Jesus Christ started a church that speaks with his authority. And guess what he did? It's called the Catholic Church.
Well said. We got a big topic that no one wants to talk about. It's called Muslim Takeover of Europe, is biggest story of our time, and nobody knows it. You know, there's a historian named Arnold Toynbee. He once famously said, and I want to ask if you agree with this. He once said, civilizations die from suicide, not murder. Interesting, huh? Do you agree with that? Civilizations die from suicide, not murder. Using this as a springboard, one of the commentators, Mark Stein, show in a new video how Western Europe is already in the death throes of demographic suicide because couples are no longer having enough children. He then shows how a thriving Muslim population in Western Europe is well on its way to filling all the empty spaces. You know what the most common name of a child in England is? Henry? No. Muhammad. Well, does that say something? Now, these are just the facts. I'm not telling you anything out of school, but nobody wants to talk about it. I'll tell you why nobody wants to talk about it, and I'll throw it back to Jesse. Because we're scared. Yeah, that's it. That's my take. Now, Jess, if you disagree, you tell me, but I think we've got a bunch of...
Spot on.
Yeah, okay, well, there you go. And that's why I want people to get that Fire and Sword Crusades, because look what our Christian brothers did to promote the faith back then with Dr. Ed Mazza and Jess Romero. Special DVD giveaway. You just call 877-526-2151. I want you to be a high-information Catholic. People like Father Zachariah Boutros, they're not scared. They're proclaiming the gospel. And I think it's time we proclaim the gospel, not only with words, but with actions, especially with bringing forth new life.
The article says, quoting Mark Stein, that Muslims have an average of 3.5 children per couple. compared with post-Christian secularists who only have 1.3 children per couple. Mark Stein said that the takeover of Western Europe by Muslims is not a prediction. He noted that some elementary schools, such as Antwerp in Belgium, already have a majority of Muslim students. Did you know that? I didn't. Mark Stein also quotes statistics from the Vienna Institute of Demography, which he says predicts, and here's the question, did you know this?
Yeah,
I didn't.
I didn't either.
He says by the mid-century, a majority of Austrians under the age of 15 will be Muslim. And think about it. This, not so long ago, this country, 90% of this country was Catholic.
That's right.
This is the biggest story of our time. Hardly anybody's talking about it. There's a few Catholic voices out there, Protestant voices out there. And again, this demographic movement has the ability to transform history in a very accelerated manner, and that's not a good...
Do you remember The Sound of Music? I sure do. You know, it was about a large family that fled the country of Vienna in 1938 in the face of Nazi takeover. Hey, Stein says this, by 2038, Austrians will no longer be singing, "How do you solve a problem like Maria?" No, you know what they're going to be singing? But how do you solve a problem like Sharia? That hit me when I read that. I went, wow, he's absolutely right. I'm done. I mean, say that says it all.
Yeah, and Mark Stein says that the President Trump in his July message in Warsaw, Poland about faith and family, he did highlight some of the importance. I don't know if you realize that. Did you hear President Trump's speech on July 6th? It was a pretty rousing speech. He issued a clear defense for Christianity that underpins all Western civilization, and President Trump urged the Europeans, specifically the Polish people, to put faith and family, not government and bureaucracy, at the center of their lives.
I'm sorry, was that a prelate that said that, or was that the president?
That was President Trump that said that.
Wait a minute. I never heard that 8 years. I never heard that ever. That's interesting. Just a thought. I thought I'd throw that in.
And Mark Stein, I don't know what do you think, or what do I think, but Mark Stein, his opinion in this article, he says that he believes it's too late for Western Europe to turn the boat around. I don't think it's too late. I'm not a pessimist, but I have to say the ship has taken a lot of water. I will say that.
Has.
There's a billionaire that agrees with everything that this article puts out, and he's a liberal, progressive billionaire. His name is Elon Musk. He's the Tesla CEO, and he's the SpaceX founder. He's a billionaire, and here's what he said to CNN on their money program. He said the world's population is accelerating towards collapse, but few seem to notice or care. And he said the world should be concerned about demographic implosion. In other words, caving in, not explosion, not too many people. He says if you look at countries like Japan, most of Europe and China, and you look at the birth rates in a lot of those places, it's only about half of the sustaining rate. That's not a good thing. We got to go back to first principles. God said, "Be fruitful and multiply." Let's go back to what God says and take Him at His word.
And that's feeding the euthanasia movement for these elderly people. I'm 60 years old. It won't be long before, if this continues, they're going to say, "Hey, Mr. Barber, Mr. Romero, you know what, buddy? We don't think it's a good idea that we spend this money on your hip replacement or whatever you're doing. We just don't think it's good because you're already, of age that doesn't make, it's not a good financial decision. So you're done. We'll put you down." What? Yeah, that's what's going to happen. So that's why the answer is always the Catholic faith. Jesus Christ has the answer to all of our problems. I said it over and over again. If we live a chaste life, if we live the Catholic faith, it's good for the economy. It's good for the planet. And you know what it's mostly good for? Getting your soul to heaven. That's even more important than the planet, more important than your economics. And that's why here at the Terry and Jesse Show, we share you with all these problems of the world. Look what's happening, with this situation in the Middle East. Look what's happening in Europe. And what's the same answer every time? Jesus Christ. You know why? Because it's true.
Yep, I would say Jesus Christ and the teachings of the Catholic Church.
His bride.
Because you have 40,000 denominations that claim Christ themselves.
Yep.
but they don't have the moral teachings of the church, so they don't have the solution. So
authority.
And I hate to say, but it's the Protestant version of Jesus doesn't have the solution. I'm not going to say the Protestant Jesus because there's no such thing. But the Protestant view of Jesus in Christianity is not the solution because they don't have a moral compass in terms of their moral theology like we do. And by the way, this made me investigate. I was wondering about Islam, if they practice contraception. I wasn't sure. Yes, they do. There are eight of the 9 classic schools of Islamic theology of Sharia law. They say 8 of the classic schools say, yep, contraception is acceptable within Islam. And also something very interesting is that they don't support abortion. There's actually a Quranic verse that opposes abortion in the Quran. Chapter 17:31, it says, "You shall not kill your children for fear of want." Now, that's a clear verse for Muslims not to practice abortion, period. But not all of them. Some Quranic theologians believe that's also a ban on contraception, but the vast majority permit birth control within Islam because they say that according to the Hadith, the Prophet Muhammad, not our prophet, their Prophet Muhammad, he knew of birth control in his time, and he approved of it in appropriate circumstances according to Muhammad.
Get your notepad out. This is High Information Catholic Radio. I want to make sure that you know about the Fire and Sword, Crusades, Inquisition, Reformation CD set. That's another good CD for you to get. Call 877-526-2151 or go online to catholicrc.org. When we come back, we're going to continue to inspire you with the gospel of Jesus Christ so that you don't leave planet Earth without it.
Back to the Terry and Jesse Show on Immaculate Heart Radio. Want to join the conversation? Call 888-526-2151. Now here's Terry and Jesse.
Pain is temporary. The victory of heaven is forever. Turn your back on this sinful world and turn to Jesus.
Amen.
Going back to this Islamic views on contraception, did you know, I didn't know some of these things. I find them very fascinating. The Muslims, abortion is not allowed according to the Quran, chapter 17:31, chapter 6, verse 151. And some of the more conservative theologians, they also use this verse, "You shall not kill your children for fear of want." They also interpret that as a ban on contraception, but the vast majority of Muslim scholars do not hold to that position. Supporters of birth control within Islam, they argue that that's a wrong interpretation. So in practice, 95% of Muslim authorities, they permit contraception to preserve the health of the mother or the well-being of the family. And again, they claim that the Prophet Muhammad, their prophet, knew of birth control and approved of it in appropriate circumstances. However, contraception, according to Islam, with the aim of having a permanently child-free marriage is not accepted. So that's an important point. They do not permit contraception and if you want to have a permanently free child marriage. Also in Islam, sterilization is wrong.
Yep.
Partly because it prevents children permanently and partly because of a text forbidding men to castrate themselves in the Quran. And so the long and the short of it, abortion in Islam, other than for medical risk to the pregnant woman, is also strictly forbidden, and contraceptive use is permitted in Islam for birth control.
We've got a great story now. I'm sure have you ever heard of St. Catherine Drexel? She defeated the KKK. Who's the KKK, right? You know who. Are you Ku Klux Klan, right? They were an anti-black, anti-Catholic group, right? In the South in the 1920s. Well, just to know about St. Catherine, first, she was born into a wealthy family in 1858. And as she got older, she took a vow of poverty. She founded a newly order of religious sisters. She took her money that was given to her by her parents and devoted her great wealth to serving those discriminated against in the United States, namely Native Americans and African Americans. Well, in the early 20th century, this got her into a lot of trouble, especially with the Ku Klux Klan. the Ku Klux Klan was not only notoriously anti-black, but as I said, anti-Catholic. So you can imagine how they felt about sisters helping blacks. Here's the great story. One thing that St. Catherine's Order did was open schools, right? That's great. Native American and African American school children. But in 1922, a local KKK group turned up against one of their schools in Texas and threatened to tar and feather the white pastor, or at one of Driscoll's schools, bomb his church. So what did the sisters do? Of course, they went and got their AK. No, they didn't. They went and prayed, of course, right? And here's what happened, according to one telling the story. The nuns prayed, and days later, a tornado came and destroyed the headquarters of the KKK, killing 2 of their members. What's the result? The sisters were never threatened again. What's the message? Don't mess with the God's saints. And that's the response we have to have today in 2017.
Which reminds me of a Bible verse in James chapter 5. It says, the prayers of a righteous person have much power. And here we see in this story, the nuns prayed, and the nuns prayed, they're righteous people, and a tornado came and destroyed the headquarters of the KKK, killing 2 of their members. To me, that makes James chapter 5 come to life, where it says the prayers of a righteous person has much to avail. So basically, I think we have to we're not right versus left, but we got to put out facts out there.
Yeah.
Most people don't know, in case you didn't, the KKK, they arose from the Southern Democrat Party.
Just the facts.
That's where they came from.
Yep.
They came from the Democrat Party, and they terrorized Catholics, they terrorized blacks, they terrorized also Republicans, both white and black. Something also very interesting, because right now in the country, boy, oh boy, do we need more St. Catherine Drexels.
Big time.
Or should we say St. Catherine Drexel, pray for us.
Amen.
Because right now, over the weekend again, you had 2 racist factions that were showing their colors, which are nothing but pure hate, the ideology of hate. You had white supremacists, and then you had black racists on both sides. And that's a bad combination.
Amen.
That's a cocktail for dynamite. And what fueled both of them? The gospel of Jesus Christ? Not a chance.
Nope.
What fueled both of them is they look at the world through the bifocals of race and color. That's always a blueprint for anarchy.
Yep.
And that's but here's something else very interesting. I'm just kind of wondering if some of the people that were from Black Lives Matters and Antifa, which is anti-fascist, or supposedly a black organization that fights against fascism. But here's what's funny. They use fascism to fight supposedly against fascism. You know, they tore down some statues of some people that were part of the Confederate Army, Confederate generals. I got no personal love for them, but here's the problem. Where does it stop? Because this is something that people did to the Catholic Church and have done to the Catholic Church. When they don't like something about the Catholic Church, what do? Destroy a statue in the Catholic Church. So what's next? Well, there's also been desecration of Catholic saints and Catholic cemeteries, because since now we don't only like we dislike the statue of this person, we're going to desecrate their grave. And then after that, what's the next thing you're going to have after that? You have persecution of the person. This happened during the iconoclast heresy. This happened also during the Protestant Reformation.
Yep.
Where the Protestant reformers, first of all, they started destroying statues, desecrating churches and altars, and then it went to open rebellion against Catholics. And not that Catholics were perfect either during the Middle Ages as well. Okay, I'm not saying that. But here's the bottom line. There was a senator in the Democrat Party by the name of Robert Byrd. He was a senator for decades. He just passed away a few years ago.
Yep.
There are libraries, there are schools, there are statues of him all over the country. Okay, in different parts of the country, should I say. So my question, I'm wondering if Black Lives Matter and Antifa is going to demand that everything with the name of Robert Byrd, who was part of the KKK, he just died a few years ago, he was a Democrat, part of the KKK, he was also a Grand Wizard. I wonder if they're going to demand that all his statues and libraries and post office, all that be scrapped also. I don't think so, because it doesn't fit their agenda, because he was pro-abortion and progressive. Nothing's going to happen to any monument of Robert Byrd. Just Mark my words.
Yeah. You know, another topic we wanted to cover today is the Catholic Church condemning priest killing in Mexico. I just have to say this as a non-Mexican. My friend's, my studio engineer, he's from Mexico. Jesse's parents are from Mexico. I live with all the Mexicans. I mean, I live in Southern California. Love Mexicans. But you know what I don't love? I don't like their government, okay? I'll be honest with you. They're a bunch of thugs. I'm seeing so much, he's smiling at me when I'm saying this. I see so much corruption in Mexico. I understand why people want to leave Mexico, because they're a bunch of phonies over there that's running the country. And so the Catholic Church is going to condemn this kind of killing, just like it condemned somebody shooting one of our senators at a softball game. Are there, this violence? We can never let that go. We have to speak out for that truth about the gospel in any case. But I want to ask this question. Do you think the people in Mexico who run the country are people of faith, or who in the heck is running Mexico? I know there's 3 separate parties, but just for us to educate us, Jesse, you know the situation in Mexico, and I want to say it seems like to me that it's one of the most dangerous countries to be in on planet Earth. Is that an overstatement, or is that true?
No, according to the article that we have before us. In fact, let me just quote the actual article so you don't say you guys are making this stuff up.
No, this isn't our personal opinion.
Yeah, this is from the Associated Press, not exactly some right-wing conservative news outlet, okay? It says, at least 4 people shot, killed in Mexico resort of Acapulco, in the Pacific resort, which has become a hot spot in Mexico's rising drug violence.
Yep.
So first of all, I want to say we got to continue praying for the Catholic Church in Mexico, because ever since the cult of the Santa Muerte and the establishment of the Mexican drug cartels, Mexico has turned into the wild, wild west.
Yep.
Here's what the article says. The death came as Mexico's violence reached new heights with 2,234 murders
Just
in June
Unbelievable.
of this year.
Terrible.
It's the country's deadliest month in the last 20 years, according to their own government data. And for the first 6 months of 2017, authorities have recorded nationwide that there are right now 12,155 murder investigations, or a 31% more of an increase from last year. Last year there was 9,300 murders, so there's a 31% increase. And so this once glamorous resort of Acapulco, where a lot of people go, is struggling right now with the surging violence. And not only that, Mexico in the last 3 years, 18 Catholic priests, did you hear? Is this microphone on? 18 Catholic priests since 2013 have been assassinated in Mexico. The last one that was assassinated was 73-year-old Father Luis Lopez Villa, because he was calling from the pulpit for a halt to the country's violence. And because he's promoting the gospel of peace and the Prince of Peace, he was slaughtered. I just wonder who slaughtered him. I can only guess. We'll continue on this on the next segment.
Yeah, when we come back, we're going to also talk about Fulton J. Sheen. Jesse's got a quote from Sheen that you're not going to want to miss. If you want to get the Fire and Sword CDs by Matthew Arnold, he's a great man on history. You can call 877-526-2151. If you want the Fire and Sword DVD, call that same number, 877-526-2151, or go online to catholicrc.org. When we come back, we're going to give you a Fulton Sheen quote.
This is Bishop David O'Connell, and you're listening to the Terry and Jesse Show on Immaculate Heart Radio.
Back to the Terry and Jesse Show on Immaculate Heart Radio. Want to join the conversation? Call 888-526-2151. Now here's Terry and Jesse.
You know something? As a country, we're better than what we've seen out there.
That's for
These
sure.
riots and this insurrection, we're better than that. How do I know? It's called God's grace. So what is grace? That's what Archbishop Sheen answers today in the Daily Reflections with Archbishop Sheen. The question is, what is grace? Here's what he says, quote, "There is something else in the world besides poor, weak human nature. There is grace. Grace is this higher wisdom, a higher power that can come to us. The word grace, or gratis, merely means that it is free. We cannot merit grace in the strict sense. It appears repeatedly in the New Testament. In the Greek, its name is charis, and it is mentioned about 150 times. If there is another life above the purely natural or human, then it is possible for every Christian to lead a double life. I like that, lead a double life. A real double life. What I mean, a natural life and a divine life, a human life and a spiritual life, close quote. Wow, I love that. Did you hear that? We can live a double life out there, or what he also, St. Thomas Aquinas calls, grace builds upon nature.
Yep.
That's what Fulton Sheen basically said today. We got a call, but I just want to mention just one thing. If some people may not believe some of the I'm going to make 3 points, and I'll tell you where you can discover this at. The Ku Klux Klan, the KKK, they came from the Southern Democrat Party. That's a historical fact. And in fact, it was the Democrats back in the 19th century who fought to keep blacks as in slavery. They're the ones that passed the discriminatory black codes and the Jim Crow laws. And again, they're the ones that started the KKK to lynch and terrorize blacks. And in fact, the Democrats fought to prevent the passage of every civil rights law beginning with the civil rights of the 1860s, and they continued to fight it in the 1950s and 1960s. If you don't believe me, and you don't have to,
just verify.
Go on the internet and Google this. Google a black professor who teaches political science at Vanderbilt University. This black female professor is called Dr. Carol Swain. Dr. Carol Swain. She teaches at Vanderbilt. She basically will give you the entire history of the Democrat Party and its racist underpinnings.
No, that's just the facts. Let's go to Maria in California. Maria, welcome to the Terry and Jesse Show.
Thank you so much.
God bless you. What's on your mind?
Okay. 6 years ago,
Yes.
I give you guys a call
Mhm.
relating to my brother that was kidnapped in Mexico.
Okay.
They asked for $5 million. We never find him. No alive, no dead. You say who rules Mexico? I think the cartels rule Mexico and rule government.
Uh-huh.
They buy whatever they want to buy. They do whatever they want to do.
Yeah.
I think the very bad rules became when Mexico passed the abortion.
Right.
Since then, they become cartels rule. It's no rule of government. Government is nothing.
Yeah, it's chaos. I got it.
Yes. They're like little kids. They're ruled for the cartels. They call them halcones.
Mm-hmm.
So when they see somebody that not belong to the towns or they have a little money, they're going to the cartels, and the cartels can kidnap and do terrible things to the people that go there.
Wow.
So in Mexico, it's very dangerous. Mexico is still very, very dangerous to anyone that is not belongs to there.
Maria, thank you for telling all this. This is very interesting. Jesse, you confirmed what she's saying, would you not?
Yeah, Mexico, unfortunately, has turned from a fledgling. It was not even a strong democracy. It's gone from a fledgling, a struggling democracy, to a drugocracy. Did you hear what I said?
Yep.
It's a country. It's a narco country. Here's the problem. Okay, there's three parties in Mexico. In case you didn't know. Okay, you have there's the PRD, the PRD. That in Mexico, that's basically the Communist Party. Then you got the PRI in Mexico. That's the Liberal Party. There would be like the Democrat Party. Then you have the PAN, P-A-N. That would be like the Republican Party, the Conservative Party. Okay? The PRI, who's been in power for decades, and they're once again in power right now, it's common knowledge by everybody in Mexico that they are in league with the cartels. In other words, that there's a symbiotic relationship between the Liberal Party in Mexico, the PRI, and the cartels. And so as a result of the PRI being in power for decades, except for a small little stint with the last president, you have this basically this quid pro quo relationship that you have. You know, you grease my hand, I'll grease your hand. This is what fuels Mexico. And then to make it worse, you have the cartels that have openly rejected Catholicism, and so has the government, by the way. Most of the people that work in the Mexican government are Masons. Okay, you can't be a practicing open practicing Catholic. It's just something that's not allowed. It's politically incorrect. And so most of the government in Mexico is Masonic, and you have the cartel that has a symbiotic relationship with them, and they worship the devil. They started their own religion called a Santa Muerte several years ago. And so this is the corrupt infrastructure that runs Mexico. And Mexico, again, most people there are Catholic, at least in name or by culture, but it's run by a drugocracy that has a socialist document known as the Mexican Constitution, which, by the way, most people don't realize. The Mexican Constitution was the document that was used by the Germans to write their constitution, and it was also used by the Russians to write their constitution. So the Mexican Constitution served as a model for the German and the Russian constitutions, which are socialist documents.
Just the facts. It's all written up. Let's go to, we got many calls, so let's go to Jane in Woodland, California. Jane, welcome to the Terry and Jesse Show.
Oh, hi, guys. I just wanted to clarify for people who may not know this that the group called the Anti-Fascist, or normally just Antifa, is a group of liberals funded by George Soros, and they're the groups that have done all the damage in the previous riots and things.
Okay. Well, Jane?
Let me just ask you a question, because I like facts. I know I've seen different credible websites where it says that Black Lives Matters is funded by George Soros. Where did you find this information? Because I want to make sure that my research is right if I put this out on the radio.
Gee, my helper stepped out. She would know more than me. But I listened to various radio shows.
Yeah, I don't deny it. I'll just have to do some research.
It makes sense, actually.
It makes sense to me. Yeah. Jane, I'll look it up. Thanks a lot.
Thanks again, Jane.
If somebody out there can verify that Antifa is funded by George Soros, email me, please. Send me an email or send it to Terry.
Yeah, George Soros is funding a lot of bad things. That's why I think it could make sense, but we just have to have the facts. So, Jane, thanks for your call. You're listening to the Terry and Jesse Show. If you just tuned in, we're talking about a lot of different topics, but one is the problem in Mexico about all these priests that are being killed in Mexico and the corruption that's going on in Mexico and how the government is in hoots with the drug, cartel. And I know a lot of you here listening in America realize that because you have relatives still back in Mexico and they're being threatened.
And that's why they've come here.
Yeah,
that's the reason why they've come here.
I get it.
I get it too. I get it. And that's why my heart goes out. I have compassion.
Absolutely.
Now, and I'll tell you when I was talking to Father Juan Rivas about this, and he's living in Mexico right now. He's a pastor out there, and he's very shrewd when it comes to obviously the faith and the culture and politics and stuff. And he told me that that the problem in Mexico, he says corruption in Mexico is the biggest problem in Mexico. Not poverty. He says poverty comes from the corruption. He says wherever you find corruption endemic, that's a society without hope. And he basically quoted Pope Benedict XVI, who said this. He says, any country or any society which excludes God is on the path of auto-destruction. And that's what we have right now in Mexico.
That's right.
It's a society, the government rejects God because it's a socialist government, okay? And then the government, basically, they have a symbiotic relationship with the cartels that worship the devil. And then Mexico, again, having just embraced a lot of paganism, they've accepted abortion. They've, their legislators have passed abortion. They've passed same-sex marriage in parts of Mexico, so-called same-sex marriage. And so all this chaos in Mexico, it's a spiritual problem.
Absolutely.
Unless we address the spiritual problems, we will have physical problems in society and in the culture and in the streets.
Well said. This is the Terry and Jesse Show. When we come back from the next break, you're going to want to hear about this. It's a question about Jonah. Was Jonah inside the belly of a whale true? Wait till you hear the answer to that. I'm sure you've had that question over the years, and We're going to answer that when we come back. I want to mention, if you are selling your house or buying a house and you want to help us, go to our pro-life realtors on our website, catholicrc.org, and you can get a pro-life realtor anywhere in the country. And when the escrow closes, they give a little kickback back to the Terry and Jesse show. So I think you'd like to do that. Go to catholicrc.org and kick onto the link. Also, I just want to remind you, we also have Father Zechariah Boutros' CDs, Defying Death. He's evangelizing millions of Muslims with the gospel of Jesus Christ. That's what we want to do. We think that's the answer. You can get his series, Defying Death, by calling 877-526-2151. And I also want to thank everybody who made those donations for the priest we're taking in. Father will be coming next week to visit, and we're going to set up a place for him here at the Sacred Heart Chapel. If you want to make a donation to help us support a 79-year-old priest here at the Sacred Heart Chapel, call us. I'll be happy to chat with you and give you all the good information. 877-526-2151, or go online to catholicrc.org. Again, when we come back, you're going to get a good answer about Jonah and the whale. We'll be back in a moment.
This is Dr. Scott Hahn, and you are listening to the Terry and Jesse Show on Immaculate Heart Radio.
Is prayer your steering wheel, or is it your spare tire? I don't know about you, but I'll tell you right now, hang on to that steering wheel.
Amen.
That's called our Catholic faith. Have you ever heard maybe a homily or somebody say, a DRE or somebody say, that the story of Jonah is not true? That seems to be very popular these days. That's called demythologizing. Denying these accounts in the Bible, these miracle stories, as mere myth. It's fashionable with the progressives, with the liberals. So how would I respond? By the way, I'll just give you a short answer. You can go to my blog, jessieromero.com. I post a long response to this. Also, Fulton Sheen's Reflections every day. Here's what I would say about Jonah in the belly of the whale, because somebody asked the question. Well, I'm going to go right to Jesus, okay? Jesus believed in Jonah in the belly of the whale. He believed it. It was not a myth for Jesus. So if Jesus believed it, then I believe it.
Amen.
So what is this story? Okay, it's about Jonah, who was a prophet. He didn't want to go preach. He was disobeying God. He didn't want to preach to the Ninevites because they were wicked people. So he was swallowed by a whale. And for the Bible says for 3 days he was in the belly of the whale. The whale finally vomited him out onto the beach. And that way that he knew, okay, I got another chance to obey God. So he went out and he preached for 40 days and 40 nights to the Ninevites, and they converted. Okay. Some people will say that's just a myth, or that's just an allegory. Well, what did Jesus, our Lord, our blessed Lord, believe about that story? Just go to the Bible, Matthew chapter 12, verse 38 to 41. Here's what Jesus said. Quote, that then some of the scribes and Pharisees said to him, "Teacher, we wish to see a sign from you." But he answered them, "An evil and adulterous generation seeks for a sign, but no sign shall be given to it except the sign of the prophet Jonah. For as Jonah was 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of the whale, so will the Son of Man be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth." I'll stop right there. So, what's my take? Quite clearly, Jesus accepted the story of Jonah as an accurate description of a real historical event. In fact, Jesus Christ uses the story as an analogy of his death and his burial for 3 days on planet Earth. If you want more information, just go to my blog.
I want to mention something else. Carl Keating's book, Catholicism and Fundamentalism. That question came up. Just get the book from Ignatius Press. He gives an example of a man around the 1900s who was in the belly of a whale for 3 days. And when the whalers caught the whale, they found this man inside the belly's stomach. He had all kinds of acid burns from him, but he survived it. So there's a case also. I just want to mention that Fulton Sheen had a good story about Jonah and the whale that you might remember this one. Back in 1973, he was at UCLA talking to the college students, and he talked about Jonah and the whale. And there was a heckler in the back of the group there. He raised his hand and says, "Fulton Sheen, hey, I got a question." "Yeah, what is it?" "Go ahead. How do you know that Jonah spent 3 days in the belly of a whale? How do you know that?" And Fulton Sheen says, "Well, I don't, but when I get to heaven, I'll ask him how he did it. And the heckler guy says, and what happens if he's not there? And Fulton Sheen looks at the heckler and says, then you ask him. So, I mean, sense of humor, but also the point is, yes, we believe what the Word of God said about Jonah and the whale. I want to ask if we can shift gears. We got a few minutes left about the Knights of Columbus pledge to save Iraqi Christian towns disseminated by the ISIS group. In other words, they're coming up with $2 million to help one of the cities raise basically the town back to what it was before they came in with ISIS destroying their town. I think that's a very honorable thing. As a Knight of Columbus, I support that. How about you?
Yeah, I was at my Knights meeting last night, and what just a worthy group of men. This city that was destroyed by ISIS back in 2014, yep. and the Christians were evicted, is called Kerem Lash. Okay, it's on the Nineveh Plain, and it was ransacked by ISIS, and it was basically the Christians were routed from their town. But did you know that the Knights, they raised and donated $2 million for the Christians of this town, Kerem Lash? Here's also something else that I want to throw in the mix. I know a lot of people are quick to say, a lot of apologists for Islam, and are quick to say, "Oh, Jess, but they honor the Blessed Virgin Mary and they think highly of her." Now, that may be true. You may look at a few verses in the Quran that may be true. There's also verses in the Quran that say that they say we Catholics call Mary the fourth person of the Trinity, that we consider her part of the Trinity. So they also misrepresent Mary in the Quran. But here's another thing that I would say. It's very interesting to me when I look at all these pictures of all these churches in Afghanistan, Syria, Iraq, in the Middle East that are destroyed. You know, the first thing that they destroy are the statues of the churches. Specifically, if there's a statue of Mary, they'll destroy it before they go into the church. And so it's kind of interesting to me, to a lot of Catholics out there that like to make excuses for the behavior of Islam, what I would call Catholics who are apologists for Islam. They'll say, oh, they love Mary. Really? Get on the internet and take a look at how many statues of Mary have been destroyed by Islamic terrorists. I just happen to disagree with you, but we can agree to disagree and still be brothers in Christ.
Absolutely. And I just want to mention that our bishops are also praising the Knights of Columbus along with Pope Francis on behalf of the persecuted Christians, as well for defending and promoting the sanctity of marriage and the dignity and the beauty of the family life in Iraq. And, you know, I want to ask this question, and we got a couple minutes, but the Knights' action were matched by a similar donation by an interesting country. Guess which country it was? Hungary. The government of Hungary, which recently donated $2 million to save another predominantly Christian town in Iraq. You know, I want to ask Jesse a question. Jesse, Poland, Hungary, what are they doing that they're able to help? Why do they see a little different? In other words, they're not like Italy or Germany or the other Western European countries. They don't seem to have the problems they have. What's the story? Why are they donating money to help Christians? I mean, where are they getting that zeal from? Go ahead.
The practice of their Catholic faith.
That's the difference.
You just named two countries right now, Poland and Hungary, that are countries that are basically holding Europe together. These countries are still practicing the Catholic faith. The people there are still a praying community. They're having children. They're receiving the sacraments. That's the difference in those countries, and that's why they probably have some surplus money and some generosity in their heart to help out the Christians in Iraq and Syria and some of these other places that are being routed by Islamic terrorists.
I hate to be politically incorrect. It's at the end of the show, but you know me, Jesse. Why is it that Hungary and Poland aren't having lots of problems with sabotage and all kinds of bombings in their country like the other countries? What's the difference, my friend?
Because they're implementing St. Thomas Aquinas' view of immigration. I'm serious.
Really?
Anybody can get on the internet. Please type in St. Thomas Aquinas on immigration. Okay? Hungary and Poland are implementing Thomistic principles on immigration, which it just makes common sense. which basically says, like, for example, one thing that St. Thomas would teach, he says, you don't give somebody citizenship immediately. You have to make sure that that person has the heart of that country, the constitutional heart for that country, and now wants to integrate into that country and not start a separate society within that country. So St. Thomas Aquinas said it's prudent for countries to wait about 3 generations to make sure that they have the national sensitivities within their heart to want to become citizens, to grant them citizenship. And that's what Hungary and Poland is doing, Terry. They're applying St. Thomas's principles on immigration, which I believe make a lot of sense.
I know that St. Thomas is a doctor of the church, but man, he's got a PhD in common sense. I wish some of us would look at that and say, wait a minute, this makes sense. Look what the success rate here is. And I think that, and the other one that St. Thomas talks about is the citizenship, the safety of citizens as being a responsibility of the government. That's what Thomas teaches. I think it makes sense here. We're almost out of time, but I want to thank everyone who's been supporting our work here at the Catholic Resource Center and the Terry and Jesse Show. We're hoping to see some of you at the Elevate Conference at the end of the weekend. I understand we're pretty much sold out, so it'll be a big group down there. I hope to meet you personally. Also, I want to remind you, if you want Jesse Romero to come speak on any of the topics, A to Z, the guy can speak on anything, English or Spanish, go to his website, jesseromero.com. If you'd like for me to come and speak on Fatima or evangelization, talk to your young people about chastity, yeah, I'm happy to do any of those of the above. You just call 877-526-2151. Jesse, the last thing I want to mention about the Knights of Columbus, how people can go to their website and support this mission, correct? They just go to the Knights of Columbus? I don't see it on the...
Yeah, and the Knights of Columbus, just Google them, but they have a link.
Yeah.
The Knights are specifically involved in trying to stop the genocide.
Good.
When you go to the Knights of Columbus website, there's a link. It says stopthechristiangenocide.org.
Perfect.
Stopthechristiangenocide.org.
Perfect.
That's sponsored by the Knights of Columbus. And there's also another great one by Eastern Catholics. It's called churchinneed.org. churchinneed.org. I don't know about you. It breaks my heart to see what's happening to our people in the Middle East. It breaks my heart. It makes my blood boil.
Yes.
And it makes my heart ache. And if we don't act, like more Christians are going to die. And this is the land where Christianity was started. This is the land of the Bible. And as Catholics, this is our legacy. We can't turn a blind eye and act like everything's hunky-dory.
Well said. We thank you again for joining us, taking the time with the Terry and Jesse Show. Tell your friends to join us tomorrow. Same time, same station. May God richly bless you, and we'll leave it with Bishop Sheen, okay? Full Sheen ahead. God love you.